What's up guys, it's River and today we're looking at travel cameras. We're gonna look at cameras that are small and compact and perfect for traveling, but also look at cameras that are rugged and strong and made to handle tough travel conditions. Most importantly, we're gonna look at different types of cameras for different types of travelers, from DSLRs, mirrorless to compact cameras. So whether you just want to casually shoot photos by the pool or you want to come home with an epic travel journal of photos and videos, either way, I've got you covered. Let's get into it. By the way guys, if you're new to the channel, my name is River and we talk about anything and everything to do with camera gear, including teaching you guys how to take better photos and videos. So if you enjoy this content, please do leave a like. It helps me keep making more of this content for you guys. So please do leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more of this content and all of the products that we talk about today or anything that I mentioned. I'm going to leave links down below in the description. So make sure to check that out and let's get into the video. Alright guys, let's get right into it. The first camera on the list is the Canon T7. It's the budget option on this list, and it's for anybody that just wants to casually take photos by the pool, isn't trying to do anything too fancy, and they want a budget or cheap option. So, despite being a budget option, the Canon T7 actually delivers surprisingly good results. The reason for that really is the Canon color science. The colors look good right out of the camera, you almost don't need to edit them, and people specifically look really good. These cameras make skin tone look really good. In terms of photos, it does 3 frames per second, which is kind of slow, but if you're a casual shooter, just casually shooting by the pool or on vacation, you really don't need anything faster than that. And it also does video at full HD up to 30 frames per second. The only problem that I have with this camera in video mode is that the autofocus is kind of slow and it will tend to skip around when you're trying to get something in focus. In photo mode, it's great. In video, it's just kind of lackluster. But again, if you're a casual shooter, you really won't care about this stuff. What you will care about though is the design of this camera. The ergonomics on this camera are fantastic. It's super easy to use, and on top of that, it's really well built. It can really take a beating on the road. The battery life, in my opinion, is pretty decent. It's by no means amazing, but it's not bad at all. However, I do realize a lot of you guys actually need that autofocus mode in video, so for you guys, I actually recommend the Nikon D3500. It's slightly more expensive, but for that extra bit of cash, you actually get faster photo mode at 5 frames per second, and you get video at full HD up to 60 frames per second, which is 2 times slow motion. So if you want to get any juicy B-roll of slow motion down by the pool, this camera's gonna do it for you. And on top of that, the autofocusing system is way better for both photos and videos. But overall, whether this is your first camera or you just want a budget option, the T7 and the D3500 are fantastic choices and you simply cannot go wrong. And I realize a lot of you guys probably already found your camera, so in that case, I do recommend you stick around and watch the rest of the video, but in case you do go, make sure to leave a like on this video before you go, and I'll see you next time. But for those of you guys that are sticking around for a camera that has a bit more horsepower, for you guys, I have the Canon M200 and maybe the Canon M50. The two cameras are almost identical with very slight differences depending on what you need. Both cameras have a 24 megapixel sensor and that gorgeous Canon color science. However, the Canon M200 when it comes to photos shoots at 6 frames per second, which is pretty decent, and the Canon M50 shoots at 10 frames per second, which is blazing fast. If you're a casual shooter, the M200 will do you just fine, but if you're someone that's shooting with a lot of movement, the M50 is going to guarantee that you do not miss your shot. And as for video, the two cameras are exactly the same. They both do full HD up to 60 frames per second for 2 times slow motion and 120 frames per second at 720p for 4 times slow motion. Wait, that's 3 times slow motion, 4 times slow motion. Now these cameras do have 4K, however, it comes with a 1.7 times crop, which means all of your images get zoomed in, and 4K mode in this camera isn't very sharp. I really don't recommend these cameras if you're looking for a 4K camera. For you guys, I have something later in this list that would be perfect and should still fit your budget. If you're someone that's going to be doing a lot of vlogging with these cameras, the 4K mode is not going to work for you because of that zoom in. The camera is going to be way too close to your face and you won't be able to show much of the environment around you. But what makes these cameras really good for traveling is that both of them are very compact cameras. The M200 is very slim and has a really sleek profile that can easily fit into a purse or a jacket pocket. And on top of that, it has a flip-up screen so that you can see yourself if you want to record yourself. The M50 has a slightly fatter body, but it does have its advantages. It has a side articulating screen that is way more user-friendly, and on top of that, it has an input for external audio, so if you want to put a mic on it or use wireless audio, this camera is going to give you that option. And the M200 does not have an input for external audio, but the internal audio in the M200 is just fine. Now, if you're having trouble deciding between the cameras, I recommend the M200 for a casual person that just wants a great camera that's nice and compact for vacation. You're just gonna be shooting yourself, maybe you're vlogging. This camera is gonna do you just fine. But if you're a little bit more serious about your production and you want that faster photo rate and you want that side articulating screen with crisp external audio, I really do recommend spending that little bit of extra cash for the M50 Mark I. Also, I just want to quickly let you guys know there's actually two versions of the Canon M50. There's the Mark I and the Mark II. The two cameras are exactly the same, except the Mark II has wireless web streaming capabilities and 30% faster autofocus. Now, if you're not a professional, if you're not too serious, I don't recommend spending the extra money, but if you're pretty serious about your video production, it's only an extra 50 bucks. You get wireless streaming, plus you get faster autofocus. And the next camera on the list is the Fuji XT-200, and it's a camera that I'm very excited to talk about. Now, the thing about Fuji is that it's one of those brands that I recommend to everybody, but Fuji cameras have kind of a big price tag on them. But thankfully, the XT-200 is priced pretty competitively. So let's talk about the specs. This camera has a 24 megapixel sensor, which is pretty standard, and in photo mode, it does 8 frames per second, and in video mode, it does full HD up to 60 frames per second. But in my opinion, the big selling point is the fact that it gives you 4K without a crop, up to 30 frames per second. And the 4K in this camera is very, very sharp. The 4K in this camera is easily good enough for vlogging and travel videos or really anything you want to do with it. Personally, I would feel very comfortable using this on a professional travel film, but if you are someone that's a professional travel filmmaker, I have something special for you guys later in this list. As for the autofocus, it's pretty good. It's not quite as good as Canon or Sony, but it's perfectly serviceable and it's by no means bad. But what's really special about this camera is the digital gimbal stabilization. Now, it has built-in stabilization, but Fuji claims that it's as good as a digital built-in gimbal. And personally, while I don't know if it's quite gimbal good, it is extremely smooth and I was very, very impressed. However, the reason I think these cameras are really interesting and the reason I personally am excited to talk about them is the built-in film emulations and the color science. A lot of people love the look of vintage film, or they simply want a more artsy look to their photos and videos, and the Fuji cameras are perfect for that. Fuji cameras have built-in film emulations for both photos and videos that look gorgeous. They do not look like cheesy filters. They look amazing. The reason for that is that Fujifilm, aka Fuji Camera, actually makes the 35mm film, so they've simply taken that chemical process and put it into their cameras. These cameras have a really interesting look. If you want something that's a little bit different, I really do recommend the Fuji cameras. And when it comes to design, the Fuji cameras stick with that vintage feel. The buttons and dials on this camera are made to feel like a vintage camera, but it still includes all of the modern features that you would want on a brand new camera. But one thing that I have to mention about the Fuji cameras is that the menu system is a bit clunky and it's not very user-friendly. It will take a bit of learning. So overall, the Fuji cameras are an amazing value. You get gorgeous 4K, plus you get this really interesting and artsy look to all of your photos and videos. If this is your first camera or you simply want to try something new, I do recommend the Fuji cameras. All right guys, next up, let's talk about compact cameras. This is for somebody whose top priority is size and ease of use. For you guys, I have the G7X Mark II and Mark III. The two cameras are really similar with slight upgrades in Mark III. Both cameras have a 20 megapixel sensor, which is a 1-inch sensor plus a built-in lens from 24 to 100 millimeters. And both cameras have a variable aperture of 1.8 to 2.8, which means both of these cameras are great in low light situations even without a flash. But the place you'll see the biggest difference is the frame rates and shooting speeds. When it comes to photos, the Mark II does 8 frames per second, which is pretty respectable, but the Mark III does 20 frames per second, which is bananas. And when it comes to video, the Mark II does full HD up to 60 frames per second. However, the Mark III does 4K up to 30 frames per second, plus it does full HD up to 120 frames per second for that 4x slow motion, which is amazing. And in terms of design and the physical body, the two cameras are virtually the same, but the Mark III has an input jack for audio. But the main reason to get either of these cameras is that they're nice and compact, super easy to use, and they will fit in your back pocket. Also, if you're somebody that wants to see themselves, these cameras have a top flip-up screen, which in my opinion should be fine for compacts, but a lot of people do want a side articulating screen. For you guys, I do recommend the Sony ZV-1. The Sony ZV-1 is pretty close to the Mark III in terms of price, but personally, I think that camera is totally overkill for a travel camera. And going over to the Sony ZV-1 for the side articulating screen is fine, but you will lose a little bit of that Canon user friendliness and the simplicity that comes with Canon cameras. But if you're somebody that wants a pro compact camera, the Sony ZV-1 does have cinema profiles built right in for anybody that wants to really color grade their image. But what if you're somebody that actually wants overkill? Somebody that really wants to take their images to the next level. Maybe this is your first camera or you're finally getting serious about your photos and videos. For you guys, I do recommend checking out the Camera Boost course in the link down below. In this course, I'm gonna show you step by step how to master your camera on a technical level, make you an absolute pro. And after that, I'm gonna share all of my creative secrets on how to take your work from looking just okay to looking absolutely mind-blowing, something that's gonna get thousands of likes on Instagram and is really going to impress people. So if you're somebody that wants to take their work to the absolute next level, I highly recommend checking out the Camera Boost course in the link down below. So last but not least, what if you're somebody that wants a really professional and serious camera? Because when you go on this travel trip, you want to do something amazing with your photos and videos. And for you guys, I recommend the A6000 series. And you might be like, wait, series? You mean a camera? No, the reason I'm recommending the entire series is because it's kind of like iPhones. Depending on what exactly you need, there's a different camera at a different price point for you. All the cameras are really similar, but they just have slight differences that make them perfect for different shooters. In this specific case, we're gonna talk about the A6000, the A6100, and the A6400. The A6000 is the oldest, but it's also the most affordable camera. This camera does 11 frames per second in photo mode, which is blazing fast with amazing autofocus in both photos and videos. And when it comes to video, it does full HD up to 60 frames per second. The only thing that's holding this camera back is the lack of an audio jack and older color signs. So it's really a camera where you're gonna have to adjust your colors to really get a beautiful image out of it. In-camera colors are just kind of okay. If you're somebody that really cares about the color science, the A6100 is perfect because it has that input jack for audio, but it also has the new Sony Venice color science, which look amazing. This is color science straight from Sony's cinema line of cameras, the kind that they use to shoot Hollywood movies, so this camera just has a gorgeous image right out of the camera. There is no upgrade in terms of shooting speed in photo mode, but the autofocus in both photos and videos is vastly improved, like by a lot. But Sony already has the best autofocusing system in the industry, so that's saying something. The main place where you'll actually see the upgrades is video mode. In video mode, it does 4K up to 30 frames per second and full HD up to 120 frames per second, which looks amazing. But it does not have any professional cinema profiles like S-Log 2 or Cinema Gamut 4 built right in. For that, we have to look at the Sony A6400. The A64 has a slightly worse autofocusing system, but unless you're really nitpicking, you probably won't notice it. But the main advantage of the A6400 is the fact that it has cinema profiles built right in, and this is only something I recommend for people who really want to color grade, push and pull their colors in post-production. For otherwise, most people are going to be really happy with the new Sony colors. The only major criticism that I have with the A6000 line is the fact that the battery life absolutely sucks. Like most of the cameras we've talked about on this list, I do recommend getting a spare battery because most of them are compact, small cameras, but the A6000 line, the Sony cameras in general, just have abysmal battery life. You should get 2 to 3 spare batteries. It's because these cameras have so much horsepower in them that they just chew through batteries. But overall, if you're someone that's super serious about making gorgeous travel photos and videos, the A6000 cameras are perfect minus the battery issue. Well guys, that's pretty much it for this video. If you enjoyed this video and got value out of it, please do leave a like down below. It helps the channel out, helps me out, and if you really want to learn how to take your work to the absolute next level, check out the link down below for the Camera Boost course. You will not be disappointed, and I will either see you in the next video or in the course. Peace.